The night was balmy, the grill crackling with steaks, and a bluesy note whistled across the backyard when a voice cut through the air like glass and a knife. "That's my house. My sister's taking over my wife." Clara spilled her drink, her hand slipping to the ground. I let the tongs fall, and our dog retreated 3 steps, ears back. There stood Diane, the president of the HOA at the border of our lawn, flanked by a woman in oversized sunglasses, a white jumpsuit, and a cloud of perfume that would strangle a wasp nest. The woman Sylvia swept our home like she was conducting an auction at a high-end estate sale. "My sister Sylvia has selected this house," Diane stated. "You have 30 days to leave." My brain short-circuited. Claire and I looked at each other, then burst out laughing, not because it was amusing, but because it was absurd. Diane's face remained a mask of smug certainty. She moved closer, handing me a letter on fake official HOA letterhead referencing an emergency reassignment provision and a family consideration clause moving our home to Sylvia because of her needs. "My name wasn't even mentioned. You're serious?" I scoffed. Diane tossed her sleek bob and said, "The board has approved start packing." Sylvia, scrolling her phone, jumped in. "That kitchen's getting a full gut job." She didn't even glance us. Clara made a choked sound, ready to fire back, but I grabbed her arm, keeping calm unbeknownst to them. 6 security cameras were recording every word. One zoomed in on Diane's ridiculous letter. What they didn't know, and what made this stunt gloriously stupid, was that I, Daniel Harper, was a federal civil court judge, actively overseeing a case against Diane's HOA for fraudulent assessments overreach and illegal occupancy demands. I wasn't assigned the case colleague Judge Alvarez was, but I'd nearly choked laughing when I saw Diane's name on the defendant line today. "I played dumb interesting," I said, scanning the letter, fighting a smirk move in date. Diane, oblivious to my tone, said, "First week of next month, Sylvia's hired movers clear your stuff before her paint samples arrive." Sylvia, now snapping photos of our porch, strolled into our yard, uninvited, critiquing the windows, and planning a hot tub. Diane lectured about community values and sacrifices for families in distress. I asked what distress Sylvia experienced. "Emotional healing from a divorce." Diane replied, dead serious, "It's in our mission statement." I bit my cheek to prevent laughing. Clara stood paralyzed in shock, torn between anger and disbelief. Diane dropped another bomb. She'd amended the HOA database to reflect Sylvia as the pending owner and made an appointment with a locksmith for Friday. "Will police be needed?" I asked. "They won't be required," she said smugly. "You'll be out?" I leaned against the railing, the audacity sinking in. This wasn't entitlement, it was a legal ambush by someone clueless about the law, figuring she could bully a judge out of his home with a phony rule. "You know, Diane," I said, "I'll get some things and make this a cinch." She beamed. "That's the community spirit." Sylvia added, "Leave the curtains. They're my aesthetic." Clara Schott gave me a look like I'd lost it, but I nodded and went inside in my office. I shut the door, pulled out the file marked HOA Diane Reynolds, and added screenshots from the cameras and a transcript of their drivel. I called Alvarez. He laughed halfway through my summary. "She tried to steal your house. That's award-winning bold. It gets better." I said she has a locksmith and an emotional hardship clause. He stopped, smiling. "I'm having the hearing sooner. Let's get this in writing outside." Sylvia was gathering measurements to plan a Tesla charger. Diane was looking through our garage. I cracked the door, still smiling. "Just called our insurance, regarding the transfer in the event something does go missing." Diane struggled, but nodded. Whispered Clara, "What are you doing?" I said, "Letting her dig her grave. I'll give her the shovel when the locksmith arrives that night." Sylvia put our home up on Instagram, future home vibes. Diane commented, "Ho's got your back, sis." I screenshotted it, adding it to the evidence pile. Diane thought I was just another homeowner. She didn't know I was about to rule her world into oblivion. Morning brought Diane strutting down the street like a general, clipboard in hand, trailed by a lanky man in a polo Victor Clean, a shady property assessor I recognized from 3 HOA fraud cases, unlicensed, and under investigation. He was present to value my house for Sylvia. I opened the door before they rang. Diane announced an inspection readiness. I believe the transfer wasn't until next month, I said. Looking at Victor, she brushed it off. Routine. Victor's certified Sylvia needs renovation plans. I moved aside, always glad to assist the community. They waltzed in like realtors. Victor sweeping with a laser mumbling figures. Diane pointing at outdated paint and bad lighting. Clara in the living room looked up with a Brooklyn glare. Can I help you? Diane smiled, just making sure no surprises for Sylvia. Clara deadpanned. Oh, she's in for a surprise. Victor nodded at our countertops while Diane made plans to gut the kitchen island. I asked Victor if he was licensed. He stammered yes, naming an imaginary board. I smiled, my lapel camera rolling. Diane stormed upstairs, saying Sylvia would knock out our bedroom wall into the neighbor's property. I asked, she smirked details. We'll deal with. They moved out after Victor gave me a document with forged lines saying I'd voluntarily vacated, my attorney would check. I said Diane tense but smiled habitual. I read the form forwarded to the state license board and called Detective Maria Chun at the HOA Fraud Division. You videotaped Klein's perjury on camera. She said gift-wrapped case tomorrow. Diane affixed a notice on our door, property conveyance pending, stamped red neighbors. Whispered some texting to inquire whether we were relocating. I responded, HOA mix-up. Diane waved smugly as she went by. She did not know that her HOA case had reached federal review upon the tip of a board member. I'd flagged it for priority, and prosecutor, Lena Hayes, who despised bullies, was on it that night. I encountered 3 board members, Ellen Marcus, and although a coffee shop Ellen on the verge of tears indicated Diane forged her signature and threatened fines for leaks, Marcus and Theo confirmed. No, there was no reassignment clause. She's destroyed lives. Marcus said, I'll testify, I swear. Legal aid. They agreed to have an emergency meeting at my home. Diane's silence was broken Friday with a group message from Marcus. She'd posted an HOA meeting Sunday to make the transfer legal. I'd offered my home as the location cameras at the ready Sunday. Ellen, Marcus, and Theo came nervous but armed with bylaws and pilfered files, with evidence of Diane's unapproved fines and made-up rules at 100 p.m. Diane burst in heels, clicking Sylvia behind her with a binder and indoor sunglasses. Let's begin. Diane snapped. I smiled. Greetings, meetings, in session, sit. She glared, realizing I'd asserted myself. This isn't approved without my authorization. Ellen, voice trembling, replied. 3 board members can request a meeting. We did. Diane's eyes went wide. Sylvia collapsed onto the couch. Can we talk move-in timelines? I've selected furniture. Diane shut her up, turning to the board. This is my HOA. He doesn't belong, she indicated to me. I pushed her doctored letter across the table. Explain this approved transfer. Her face convulsed. Internal document. Marcus interrupted. We've never seen it. Where's that stamp? Theo interjected. It had been decommissioned years prior. Diane's empire came crashing down as the board turned on her. She yelled, accusing them of betrayal. Me, of conspiracy. We're leaving. She spat at Sylvia, who pouted. So no house. They stormed out, Sylvia's perfume lingering like defeat. We crafted a resolution to suspend Diane's powers and requested a county audit. That evening, Clara and I drank tea on the porch. Now what? She asked. We wait. She'll escalate or collapse. A security alert buzz. Diane appeared on our porch, crying, disheveled, sitting for 10 minutes before disappearing into darkness. Something had shattered, but I knew she'd come back swinging Tuesday. The neighborhood bust residents retreated. HOA payments requiring audits. A petition to remove Diane was supported by 80%, an anonymous package. Arrived records revealing Diane's duplicate bills, false expenses, and HOA funds spent on Sylvia's landscaping. I sent it to Lena, who responded, felony charges. State auditors raided the HOA office. Diane stormed in, screaming of vendettas, ripping a warrant, and 2 phones recorded it. And her meltdown went viral. Officer Torres called. Diane's harassment claim against me, citing her fake letter, was dismissed. That night, Sylvia attempted change our locks, caught on camera. I stopped her, threatening trespassing. She fled, vowing, this isn't over. Friday. Alan struck Diane's residence for unpaid HOA taxes. Her meltdown reached its peak as movers emptied her home pursuant to a foreclosure order. Neighbors watched, some with popcorn. Sylvia pulled up, saw the mayhem, and left. Leaving Diane, her house struck auction proceeds, paying penalties. Sylvia's social media went dark. She fled town. The HOA elected Ellen president, enacting transparency rules. Neighbors waved freely. The air lighter Wednesday. Lena called warrants, served charges, filed for fraud fund misuse, and attempted property seizure. I watched from my porch as Diane was served, her legs buckling. Clara raised a wine glass to the storm's end. I clinked mine, and the next I'd hung a sign under Diane's faded notice. Evicted by Truth Court. Approved. Justice didn't roar. Waited patient until Diane's lies collapsed under their own.